Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show of a very special guest. She's in Texas now, but you'll see as we go through her new book, she's been all over the place, all over the world, Alaska, Pakistan, Thailand, China, uh, and she's in the U.S. now. But we talked 4 years ago. I reposted our old show about her earlier book, which is called Traveling Off of the X, and her name is Joe Patti Munisteri. And you'll see this book if you're watching it. She just published it. It's titled Traveler Between Worlds, and really, she is a world traveler. And interestingly, I came across this too. It's the timing is actually optimal because I've done a lot of shows on the Knights of Malta. I have one tomorrow I'm doing on the Knights of Malta, and she's been on the Isle of Malta. So I have a lot of questions about that and the Panama Papers, and she's familiar with this kind of assassination that took place. And there's a lot of kind of dark stuff that she's encountered in the world. A lot of sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, USAID, which is in the news here in the U.S., at least in my social media. But she can talk more about that. So, Joe Patti Munisteri, welcome back to the show. It's been too long.
Thank you so much, William, and thank you for inviting me.
For people who didn't hear our first show, you are bouncing around. You said you're leaving. We were talking in the pre-show. You're leaving in 10 days to go to another job. I know that you were at Al Quds in Palestine at one point. Maybe you can do a little bit of background, where you've been recently, and what led up to the publication of this book.
Yes, last we talked, I was working in education and emergencies in Bethel, Alaska. After that, I worked with the OSIN, Open Universities Network. I didn't realize at the time because I was hired through, again, a USAID project, and it was the Soros Network. So one of these days maybe I'll write about that. But that was 3 universities: Al Quds University in Abu Dis, Palestine area, the Central University of Central Asia University in Kyrgyzstan, and the second largest university in America, Arizona State University. So I was coordinating a special project for them. Then, it's not so recent. It's a year ago now. I volunteered to work in Israel after October 7th and worked in health and also worked on kibbutz and seeing some people I hadn't seen and trying to help with post-trauma, because post-trauma reactions is my specialty in Chinese medicine. And I decided I would go ahead and really publicize this book, Traveler Between Worlds, because I want to also promote a very important organization, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. They gave me a grant to go down to Mexico and take part in a study as well as psychedelic treatment with ibogaine and Sonoran toad medicine. And in fact, yesterday and today in Texas, they're trying to pass Bill 3717, which would provide for research and study for treatment in the United States. Instead of going to Mexico and other countries, veterans and other people would be able to access it. It will be a landmark vote after it's done.
Can you expand on that? Toad medicine, do you mean peyote or is there something else? And then
No,
ibogaine, you have to go to Africa to use, right?
no, you don't, as a matter of fact. Um, all right, let's see. Peyote is very different. It's a sacred plant grown in Mexico and other parts of Central America many, many years ago in my life, because I was a sun dancer, and that was on the Rosebud Reservation as well as other reservations, but in the time when Leonard Crow Dog and Mary Bravebird, before she died, they both are dead now, did use with the Native American Church. I did it once with them for helping with finding stolen children. I do talk about it in my new book, Traveler Between Worlds. But ibogaine is from Africa, you're right. I believe it's from Gabon originally. It's a plant. However, they do use it in the treatment for Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. They do use it in Mexico. So they went to Africa and they have a source there, although now they're using synthesized both ibogaine and Sonoran toad medicine, partly because of environmental concerns, because so many people are using these now. They're devastating the Sonoran toad population, and also I suppose they're depleting the Gabon plant medicine. So I was actually in a study that used a synthesized version of that, and I do discuss it a little bit in the book. But peyote is different. It is psychedelic, as is ayahuasca, but I would say from research and from anecdotes as well as scientific papers, ibogaine is the most powerful.
So ibogaine is more powerful than peyote. You
Yes.
tried these. You are kind of a psychonaut in a sense too, because you tried them, right?
Yes, many years apart, I might say. A lot of people do it serially year after year. I can't understand how they can do that, honestly. But yes, back in the 1990s. Well, the book starts out with in the 1970s at Georgetown School of Foreign Service, where I graduated from, because at that time during the Vietnam War, psychedelics were used a lot. They were used both recreationally and therapeutically, and so I talk about a specific situation I was in at Georgetown, and that was in the 1970s. Then I didn't do any psychedelics again until the one time with the Native American Church, and that was in the 90s. And then in 2022, I went down to Mexico with vets. So I've had plenty of time to process in between.
Right, and you actually kind of went under some pretty intense hypnosis at Georgetown too, right?
Correct,
Like
and I do
that's
talk about it a little in the new book as well, in more detail, because it's longer since that happened, and I see more whistleblowers are coming forward. Those of us now, I mean, I'm 72, we might not be around much longer, so I figured it was time to go ahead and catalog it, since it didn't violate any non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah, it's important. You find out more and more people have been hypnotized or in the care in that type of care, and that's also kind of a trauma, addressing trauma, childhood trauma, or things like that. So you have these treatment or for military people, trauma, so drugs, and so they literally lick the toad. I vaguely remember watching Hamilton Morris do in one of his shows, going to Mexico and licking either a toad or smoking something, or
You don't
maybe
really smoke it. I'll clear that up. I mean, some people might lick the toad, and they might have done it traditionally earlier on, but they actually sort of blow a smoke from the secretion into your nose and mouth.
so it's like a what's the right word? Like a
You inhale
shaman,
it.
shaman, like a shaman
Yes,
kind of treats you. So people go to the shaman and lie down.
this is
And
a little different. The vets is very medical. Since I was a sun dancer for 12 years and I worked with indigenous populations in many countries, I wouldn't call this shamanic what vets does. It's much more medical. I mean, we had anyway all sorts of monitors on us. We couldn't go outside, which
oh
I
well,
don't know if you've ever done any of psychedelics. Usually you want to go
a long
outside.
time.
But no, you're very monitored in the way they did it. But for me and for many other people, it was very effective. It resets your neural pathways. The hypnosis was different because that was under a MK program for the government and for the special project I was in. I was the only girl.
Do you know
at
what
the time.
number? Do you know what number project you were in?
Well, it was 19. It started 73 to 75 when I was in. Dr. Mezior, who was in the original, I think, he was CIA, and then he was the head of psychology department for Georgetown for many years, and he was my main, he administered the hypnosis. No, I'm not sure of the number. They used to go by the years, and there's some controversy about the MK because we still don't have all the files. I'd love to see the files
Right.
sometime
We don't.
myself.
I don't know if you know this, but they dropped a huge number of files. Nobody in the alternate media has gone into it because it's 1,200 files, so it's too intimidating. But I'll send you the link. They dropped it
I
in December. I don't know if you're like
I
have
did
that.
know. I do
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Just, the loop I'm in, people do send me stuff like this. What I've heard so far is a lot of it is just nothing spectacular at all. Maybe they redacted it. I heard that they actually, after the church committee, that they had, in those days there was no digital record. So I think it's probably true that they shredded a lot of the documents and will never have them. Because a lot were written by hand
Right.
as
That's
well
what
as
Helms
typed.
said. But yeah, I don't trust anybody at the CA to tell you the
No,
truth.
no.
But they
Criminals
used,
in action,
yeah, really. Well, they supposedly had 149 sub-projects, but you're like a piece of this huge
Yes, just a piece.
wilderness of like of the MK Ultra thing where it's just one dot. And I've done a lot of research and some. I mean, we can go into a camera and all these other characters, but it shows how little pieces were spread out to all the universities. So you're in centralized in DC, and they're doing stuff at Harvard and McGill and I mean everywhere really.
Oh, they
Cornell.
selected the university specifically. We'll have to do another
Yeah, I'd love to
podcast just on that, maybe when I
because it's
get back from this
yeah. I think
contract.
that
Yeah.
that's a great idea. We'll have to
Hmm.
stay in touch. You probably know more than me, but like it is a something of interest because strange things are happening still today, and
Yeah, yes, and there's different models. I was an early model, I would say, and
but
I
you
had to,
went
I had to do a lot to untune it, a lot to untune it,
but
a lot to untune all the input. Let's just put it
people
that way.
wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it if you made it
No,
said it back in the 70s. But
no, they
now with
didn't
the
believe me.
reading,
They would say I was crazy,
right?
but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it now before I die. You know, I believe
It's
it's
kind of
very important because a lot of those methods were then used on other people in other countries as well.
yeah. They learned it too. They're doing it to people in jails and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And there's new advances and all this crazy stuff that's going on.
yeah.
But yeah, they wouldn't believe it. And but now people are starting to see little pieces, and they're kind of having. There's a place in their minds to understand what was going on.
Well,
But
I, I,
you
I
were
just want to say one thing about that is I think there's been so much deliberate disinformation in movies, in television series, to make people think that it was one way when it was another. Because anybody's gone through any of these programs, at least in the 70s, knows that a lot of, the Jason Bourne and all that, that they know that there's a little kernel of truth, or what was the other one? Strange Things.
Stranger Things.
Yeah,
I
that
like
had
it.
that had quite a bit of accurate from what I saw. But they made it very exaggerated, right? They brought in all this sort of magic stuff, and so that people already have an idea, but it's deliberately implanted in them on a mass psychosis level through media. And so I don't think most people can really understand, even if we tell them. Although I think it's worth telling them now at this point.
At least leaving a record. There was another abuse victim, somebody who I know, not know personally, but from Belgium, who kind of underwent this stuff. And her name was Anna Kalukas. I don't know if you've heard her name. She was trafficked to like really horrible, horrible stuff. But nobody would ever have believed her back then. But now they're like, wow. And they did all this repetitive psychic driving. And you
Mm-hmm.
said you got partitioned too. Like that's classic kind of
Mm-hmm.
Esther Brooks type stuff where they partition the brain and things like that.
Yes, well, they also look for people who already had that. I was a kind of perfect candidate when I look back because of what has happened in my earlier life. And
They call it trauma based mind
mhm,
control for a reason,
that's
right?
that's
That's
it
right.
is, and especially in the program I was at, I also am pretty adept at being able to pick out people who probably, I'm usually right, had certain kinds of trauma that caused them to excarnate early in their life so that they have a skill. Now, how they use that skill, that's the problem, whoever gets a hold of you, how to use it.
Right. So you're excarnating do you believe that term is synonymous with dissociation?
It's a little bit different, but yes, the psychological community calls it disassociation, but they don't acknowledge any part of the spiritual, which I do.
Because that's what some of these people, when they go through this horrible trauma, it's almost like a near-death experience. They're
It
outside of their
is.
body. Yeah.
It usually happens when you are, for me, I can remember the first time now because I've gone through lots of processes to do that. It was a very severe beating at a very, very young age from my mother. I was naked. I was 4. And so I excarnated. I literally left my body to cope with the pain and to see her. And part of the reason I think I also was chosen is at that time, not many people, I'm not sure that mothers didn't abuse, but it certainly wasn't as common as stepfathers or other people. And so when your closest person, the person you've been in their body, does it to you, you have a different kind of disassociation that has to happen.
Wow. So this vets organization, the VETS,
Mm-hmm.
how big? I mean, how big is this? And you're saying you're firsthand in the front lines. You believe that these treatments, psychedelic treatments, drug treatments, are overall beneficial? Because I've heard some people kind of it doesn't send them the right direction. Like, what's your take?
I'm also a Chinese medical practitioner and have worked in many different places with many different populations. No one treatment, whether it's a Western pill or acupuncture or physical therapy, necessarily works on every patient. So, by and large, excuse me, the vast number of, especially it's being used on special operations community. That's what I went under for this grant. I don't know the exact statistics. I can look it up for you for the next conversation, but it's Amber and Marcus Capone. Marcus was a Navy SEAL, and they have a new documentary coming out called In Waves and War about this whole treatment and filming people going through it in Mexico, which will be released soon, I believe.
You should get me in touch with them.
They showed the documentary to Texas legislators yesterday. So it's quite a large organization, and it's independent. It doesn't receive any government funding, which I think is important. And I do talk about it even in the introduction to my book, because I'm a little of two minds in terms of letting everybody use it or have access to it, or perhaps, of course, pharmaceutical companies and businesses will want to get into it, just like they do.
They always do.
Procedures, right?
They always do.
For me, in my life, I've been fortunate to go through a lot of spiritual, mystical, ceremonial therapies. I mean, I was with the Shaolin in China fairly recently, but even before that, 12 years of being a sun dancer, working with the Aboriginal population in Australia, the Maori in New Zealand. That's a whole different approach which incorporates the spiritual, including exorcism from the Catholic community in Iraq. I think everybody has to decide for themselves what's best for them.
Right. So as long as it's an option in...
I like it that it's an option. I think that's very important.
Right.
And it should be, I think, one that doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean, I couldn't have gone had I not received a grant to go. I'm very thankful for that.
Right, and that's Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions.
Correct.
I mean, an interesting aspect of your life is your experience with grants and funding and USAID and how this money is spread around. You don't trust the UN or UNICEF as far as you can throw. Maybe you can talk about your experience, and I think in the context, because I think the American people are discovering, like, wow, all our tax dollars are going to these strange things, whether it's transgenderism in New Zealand or something else like that. Like, people were shocked that money's being spent that way. They're tax dollars.
Again, I found out through working on the front lines, for people who don't know me or didn't hear the first interview that we did, in addition to graduating from the Foreign Service School and being trained in that earlier on, Then I went back and I was selected for the human terrain system with the U.S. Army and completed training there. Worked in Afghanistan for 3 years, worked in Iraq on and off for 2 years, worked in Ukraine, in Siberia through the State Department and USAID programs. So I know firsthand and have known for a long time that these programs which sound, and there are people that deliberately craft it so it sounds wonderful. Civic engagement is a huge free-for-all, catch-all phrase for all sorts of corrupt money going to corrupt individuals and contracts, education programs, political education programs, which are very vague. I think people are seeing them now. They should follow the Doge, X on Doge. I think every day it's fascinating. They find others. Every day they will find categories of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars of our tax money going to these ridiculous, most of the time they're front programs.
Right.
And I know firsthand. And a lot of people have died trying to expose it, by the way. I mean, it's not like this just happened. People have tried for at least 25 years when it really started, right around the 90s.
Musk said he had 17,000 death threats, and I believe it because there's so much money at stake. These people
Yes.
are, imagine that money year after year. They're
Oh, I
used to
know.
crazy amounts of money. And those, like
Yes.
you're saying, those are front names, like the social betterment for
Yes.
Kazakhstan. It, like, none of that money may even go to that. It just goes somewhere else or
Oh, yeah,
goes in somebody's offshore account.
there was one yesterday, I think it was, promoting shea butter in Burkina Faso or something. You know, it was millions of dollars going to this promoting, quote unquote. And of course it doesn't go to that. It goes to people. It goes to criminal networks. This is the worst part. It's not just bribes, let's say, to individuals or politicians. It actually goes, I know firsthand from projects we were working on in Afghanistan and in Iraq, it ends up going to the Haqqani network, the Taliban, ISIS-K, Hamas, Hezbollah, militias in Iraq, and they know that this money is coming in. They have people working in our State Department, consulates, in the embassies. So they know when the ATM spigot is going to start and they extort the money. They threaten the people, especially for girls and women's programs. That's the worst part. And a lot of it ends up going to promoting child trafficking, promoting child labor, violence, weapons, drugs, the worst things you can imagine.
Right. So it's like they're setting up the chaos to have something to address. Like, Hamas is a front for the same people. It's not an independent organization. Either is ISIS, like these, or Al Qaeda or anything. These are all intel type things. I mean, in the head, I mean, it gets so dark. That's a whole nother show. But the American
Yes.
people are getting bamboozled, and the chaos and strife in the world is being financed by their tax dollars that are being totally wasted. It's really
Well,
cool.
it's worse than wasted, isn't it? Because it's in
Yeah.
our name, all these criminal, heinous activities, especially against children, are being waged.
Right. And on that subject, like, I mean, you spent time in
We can go to
Thailand.
Malta if you want to, because this is connected to both Thailand
Yeah,
and
let's,
Malta.
whatever you like. Let's talk about Malta. I don't know, I've known a lot. Malta's fresh in my mind, so I'm happy. Like, you were in some of these islands. Like, it's pretty cool that you were on Gozo and some of the smaller islands really recently, right? So you know the history and everything.
Yes, I've been fascinated by Malta and Knights of Malta, Papa Due. Most people don't know Papa Due. Different,
Propaganda do it.
yes, parts of the Catholic Church that originally probably were formed for positive reasons, but have become corrupted. Opus Dei as well. And Malta has just been a congregating place throughout history. If you look at the history, it's a fascinating history. But it still is. And Cyprus, too. I was just recently in Cyprus just a few months ago, and I couldn't believe what Cyprus is becoming. And they become places because of their central locality as well as their distance from Europe. And they are part of the EU, and they become a place for money laundering for a lot of oligarchs to hide out for a while, regroup, and then go back. I think Malta became infamous recently because of the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, who really was instrumental in having the independent journalist network, I think it's of 80 countries. And some people call it the WikiLeaks of the mega rich, but that's the Panama Papers. And she was a vigilant lawyer and, I believe her husband was a lawyer too, investigative journalist who uncovered some very, very big names. Now, I do put them in the book. I'm not sure I actually want to say them out loud at the moment.
Then don't. But child sex trafficking, like really naughty stuff, like horrible
really
stuff.
horrible stuff. And it was after the plane crash carrying 5 French investigators who had a lot of these documents ready to bring back for investigations in the EU, and the plane just blew up in Malta that usually has a semblance of being peaceful. And then not very long after that, Daphne was blown up in her own car outside of her house. Her son even had to find parts of her, and that drew attention, and finally people started putting some more pieces together.
Vast networks of financing and all that stuff.
So vast.
Yeah, amazing underground, and people want to get that Maltese or the Knights of Malta passport too, because they get all kinds of benefits.
Yes, well, those golden passports, one in Cyprus too. I do have a Substack now where I go into these specific types of issues and do provide links to the documents. That's not just my opinion. And I do have one just recently I wrote after coming back from Cyprus about what Cyprus does in terms
What's
of
the name of your Substack?
Joe Patti Munisteri.
Easy, your full name. So I'll put that in the show notes too. So I'll put a link to the book and the Substack.
So, because it is hard, I think if you don't see the documents as well, if you're just trying to listen to all this, it may not register in the same way if you start seeing the names of the banks involved, if you start seeing the names of the politicians and the companies involved.
HSBC, like
yes,
this is
it's one of the biggest ones all over the world for money laundering.
Yeah, ties back
and for the Catholic Church, unfortunately.
And the City of London, they're right there. They're right there. These whole networks, a lot of overlapping members between Pilgrim Society, City of London, Knights of Malta. It's not all above board. They have above board works, but the stuff that's sub rosa under the table is shocks.
It's like an iceberg in terms of percentage that we see.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. It's shocking. I mean, what's your impression of just being on the Isle of Malta?
It's beautiful.
People have said it's almost otherworldly because it's so ancient and separate, really out in the ocean. Like, it's not that big, right?
No, the 3 islands are not that big. In my life, I've worked on some islands that nobody probably has ever been to because they were military. Ascension Island I worked on. I speak about that in Traveling Off the X. That's just a military US-UK base. Cyprus, is a military, has military bases on it as well. And Malta has been a place for militaries coming from Africa, from Europe. In the World Wars, it was one of the last holdouts of the Allies. But it also has this very ancient architecture still there. And the Maltese are a very unique population. They have their own language. They've been able to get by being very diplomatic. Of course, the United States, even George Bush announced his New World Order in Malta. You have the treaties in World War II and World War I. Everybody used to go to Malta for a little while and then come back and announce it to the world. So there is something also, just like in Jerusalem and parts of the world, there is a kind of spiritual vortex in certain parts of the world, and I believe Malta is one of those places from being there.
I think that Prescott Bush, George H.W.'s daddy, is on a list as a Knight of Malta. Not disclosed, too. They don't all disclose. There's 13,500 members, but not all of them are publicized. Some are self-published. But there's Knights of Malta. I don't know if you know this, but it's interesting, too, because you were in kind of a Catholic area in Iraq. But this woman, Alina Habas, whose dad is a like chancellor in the American version of the Knight of Malta, is one of these Chaldean Catholics. So
Mm-hmm.
people like look at a map and they go, "Oh, that's all Islam." No, 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 no. It's much more variegated. There's all kinds of old churches and things that pre-existed before Islam, before the 7th century.
Yes, I was there too, by the way.
Which where?
I wasn't just in Ankawa
Okay,
and Arbil. I was near Mosul and Nineveh
okay.
Plains, or Nineveh, they call it over there. And the Knights of Malta and Papadue and that organization, I have a separate Substack article on that. And a chapter in the book, Traveler Between Worlds, I do talk about Prescott Bush and some of the other proven members of Knights of Malta for those who are interested in a deeper dive.
Right. And your take is that the Jesuits are behind all of these groups. You think the Jesuits and the Black Pope exist and they're above these
Oh,
groups?
they definitely exist.
Okay.
They don't hide it. It's a martial order. The Pope that most people know, Pope Francis, is technically the white Pope. The Black Pope is always a Jesuit. This time we have both popes as Jesuits originally. I was trained by the Jesuits, or I should say, I was instructed by the Jesuits.
Right?
Yeah, I was in the Foreign Service School.
Right.
The only F I ever got, and I look back, and at the time I was really, really upset because it upset my whole average. Of course, he meant to do this. Father King, at that time we had to take certain theology courses. I'm glad I did. And Father King was the teacher of the professor for a course called Illusion, Reality, and Salvation. And he was Jesuit, of course. Most people don't know that he was the assistant to the real exorcist that William Peter Blatty, who was a student at Georgetown, wrote in his book, The Exorcist. So he was still alive, Father King, and he taught that course. And he had a lot of opinions, one being that girls shouldn't be in the Foreign Service School at Georgetown, because at that time it was no more than 12% should be female, and we shouldn't wear pants, and he just was annoyed. And one of the things I did, which I look back and it wasn't ethical, and he was right, although I thought all of us should get punished, not just me, is I used to write term papers before ChatGPT. Now people just cut and paste, but I would write extra term papers for money as a side job, and I wrote a number of papers in our course, and for boys. They all got A's on the paper, and I got F on mine. They were all different, on different subjects.
Interesting.
And of course, that ruined my average. I can see now it was a better pivot in my life for lots of reasons. But also, he, it was the sort of thing like as if I was playing Eve the Temptress, because had I not provided those papers for them, they wouldn't have submitted them. It was kind of convoluted. But I realized later he was right. And he was very dramatic in his presentation. I'll just put this in because he knew exactly. He had a stained glass window beside him in his lecture room, which is up on the 3rd floor. And he would have his lecture in the morning and stand at a certain place on the podium. I guess he checked the times that the sun was coming over. So the sun would go through the stained glass window and give him a kind of aura as
Nice.
he was. Yeah.
So he liked the drama aspect.
He did. He was very theatrical.
But
But he was also a very powerful exorcist. I was there at Georgetown when they were filming The Exorcist.
Wow.
And we did have spontaneous fires in the chapel.
Wow.
And there were Satanists going around. It was a very tumultuous time.
I've sat down and had a lunch with Blatty's son, so I know Mike Blatty pretty well. Like we used to be friends, so interesting. But yeah, the book is Possessed. The book that Exorcist was based on is called Possessed. It's about
It was a boy originally, not a girl too.
That's right. He was playing around with a Ouija board.
Yeah.
And things went south. And they actually kind of in the network. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. So it's kind of a story about Creighton, like another Jesuit school. But
Mm-hmm.
they had overlapping. I think there were multiple. There was an article. I'll send it to you. It's really interesting. But they had four Jesuit priests involved, and they never changed their story. They were all, yeah, this happened.
Oh, I've seen lots of things in my life to know that there's lots of different forces in the world, and there are people that do have that armor of God, if you will. It's like nuclear power. It can be used for good or for ill. You know, some Jesuits are remarkable people, selfless, very educated in the spiritual realms, and use it for the good. Unfortunately, some are very into political power and go to the dark side. So it's like anything. When you have power, it can be used for all different ways. It doesn't mean you discard that power. It's just like psychedelics, like we were talking about. They can launch you into other realms. And if you don't have the right guide, it can go terribly dark.
Right. Yeah. The Jesuits are, I mean, there's so many different groups in the Catholic Church, but the
Yes.
Jesuits are the most intense, I would say. They're
Well,
not
because their training and their
sensible.
initiations
Yeah.
are different than some of the others. And some of the. I was just listening to Hildegard de Bingen music again last night and reflecting on how remarkable a person she was for the 12th century. And there were some remarkable women as well, who in those days, you know, the only way they really could pursue their mysticism gifts was through being a nun and or being in indigenous populations, being a clever woman or a medicine woman. So there are lots of forces in the world. You have to be very careful because, you know, movies and film and medium will make it like it's trivial or, yeah, but there are portals through which those can come.
Right. You have
And
a
many
quote
people.
from her. You have a quote from her right at the intro of your book.
Yes, I
So
do.
Hildegard of Bingen, Bingen. So check that out. I probably could talk to you for 5 hours. We barely scratched the
Likewise,
surface of
William.
this. I mean, just the mind control stuff for me, like what I've been researching, hypnotism. I literally bought 2 books on hypnotism yesterday, trying to understand it.
All right, I will say one thing because I know we don't have much time.
We're trying to wrap it up. Yeah.
As much as people can read books, it's like reading books about swimming or making love, right? You can read a book and think you understand about it, but there's no way you can if you haven't gone in the water or been with another person. You know, it's, for me, hypnosis, when I mean, I describe a little between my 2 books, but there's nothing that can really articulate. Same with real psychedelic experiences, same with real mystical experiences. It's only an approximation. So it's important to have a map sometimes before you go to a place. So the books can help you as a kind of an outline. But for your listeners as well, please don't take just these writings. And a lot of people now, not you, William, but you know, a lot of people will just go on Google and look for a book, and they don't really know the credibility of the person who's writing it.
This is true. There's a lot of people just writing for money or fame or what, there's a lot of different agendas sometimes behind book writers, but yours is
Yes.
really amazing. Like you really are a traveler between multiple worlds, like 3 dimensions. It's really something else. Where can people find the book? I know that you have I bought the Kindle, so you can get Kindle
Oh, thank you.
hardcover, correct?
Yes, and I read my book this time,
Oh, cool.
and so it's on audio. I know a lot of people don't want it, but the Kindle version has the color photographs, so I always recommend that too. I have a website that has everything on it, JOPATTIX, joepattix.com. It's easier than my last name. So joepattix.com, on it I have all my books, articles, I have a link tree. I have other podcasts I've been on. I'll put yours on too, William.
Thank you.
And people can go there and they can also search through. That's exactly it. Thank you for putting up there. And you'll see that I have photos also from my workplaces, and I have reviews. Luckily, a number of people from different countries have come forward to review me because I've had already pushback, death threats. It's amazing. I've just come out in the last couple of years writing and being on some podcasts, And the amount of hate, especially after working in Israel this last time, it's really daunting sometimes.
It's an angry world. There's a lot of angry people. It's my experience too. I just got a death threat last week. So I will put links to your Substack, your website, and the book. People check it out, and we will have to talk again once you get back to the States
We
or
will.
whatever. But again, the guest is Joe Patti Munisteri, Munisteri, and the book we talked about today. There's a lot more chapters there, guys. It's called Traveler Between Worlds. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, William. Hope to speak again.
Likewise. Stay there. Stay there.